A lot of us right now may be feeling like our desires and our discipline are not moving in the same direction. Like there's this odd sense that we're being pressured to move forward, but we're also simultaneously confused on who we're becoming and why. And the sky right now is showing us why that conversation is coming up in so many different ways. But the one I want to talk about today specifically is that Venus and Mars are moving through the sun. This is called a Cazimi in the sign of Capricorn. And we've got all this energy in Capricorn as we start the new year, which has so much to do about identity. And so there's a new identity wanting to emerge, and that means that our desire and our direction have to align. And maybe that's something that we haven't really put a lot of thought into, like really put a lot of thought into. But let's first talk about Capricorn, Venus, Mars, and what a Cazimi really does. Capricorn is about responsibility, right? It's the 10th sign in the zodiac, rules the 10th house, responsibility, ambition, achievement, legacy. This is the mountain goat or the sea goat. It's moving towards something. It's climbing a mountain. It's wanting to build something. And we've talked about this extensively with the full moon in Cancer video. A Cazimi is when the moment right when the sun, or I'm sorry, the planet is moving through the heart of the sun. So it's a very small window of time when it's a Cazimi. And this is a purification of that planet and regarding what sign it's in. So let's talk about Venus, right? Venus is the pleasure principle. It's art, beauty, harmony, love, creativity. Mars, and Venus is more naturally aligned with the feminine principle. Mars, on the other hand, is assertion, action, independence, agency, strife, conflict, more aligned with the masculine principle. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because later on in the video, I'm going to talk about how I think this will be affecting men and women differently. So something is being purified around ambition, around desire, direction, responsibility. And, when we think about Capricorn, oftentimes money comes up. And for me, whenever I think about any earth sign, money comes up. And because this is happening in Gene Key or Human Design Gate 54, money also comes into play because the shadow of Gene Key 54 is greed. But the gift is aspiration. And I'm going to talk about how this relates to me personally and give you a personal example of how this can show up because I have my North Node in Gate 54. So this is very important to me. You may be noticing that what you want is changing, or that old goals are not motivating you the same way. The sun's rays are going to purify how you relate to Venus, how you relate to Mars, how you relate to Capricorn, ambition, responsibility, mature adulthood. Saturn rules Capricorn, and Saturn right now is in the sign of Pisces. So an old way is dissolving, right? We've talked about this with Saturn and Pisces, Neptune and Pisces. There's a grief because we're outgrowing certain desires. We're outgrowing certain ways of acting. And the new thing hasn't come into form yet. I talked about this in my year one video, but also in my Thrive through 2026 bundle, is that a lot of times we think of 1 years as like a year where like things start to finally make sense. And in some ways that's going to be true, definitely more so than a 9-year, which 2025 was. But 1 is the spark of creation, right? Creation takes form with 3. 3 is the number of creation. So 1 is the initiation into something. It still may be unclear and uncertain about what we're being initiated into, which is exactly why I'm doing my Inner Revolution immersion at the beginning of this year. And it's concluding on the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. So it's like we're being activated into the new identity at the end of the Inner Revolution immersion. It's absolutely amazing. I'm going to have an email coming out about how I chose this date, and it's so wild. So if you're interested in joining that, doors open January 5th, and it begins January 17th. And these are kind of the things we're going to be doing, right? Like, who am I beneath these roles? Beneath the shoulds, beneath the conditioning of who I've become. And this sky right now is also asking those questions, right? How am I acting when it comes to achieving my goals, and what are those goals? So there's such a reorientation happening. It's actually kind of wild. And if there's been any sort of identity built around competence, responsibility, or survival that is outdated, that is going to be under strain right now. And you're probably feeling that in your body. Now, the other thing that's really important to note about this is that Jupiter is going to be opposing these planets. And by the way, January in general there's a Mercury Cazimi happening as well. There's a Pluto Cazimi happening as well. There's a lot of purification happening in January. And so Jupiter in Cancer will be opposing this. So let's just think about this, right? We think about Jupiter as being this beautiful, blessed planet, right? Prosperity. And I've talked about this before. Obviously, every single planet has its shadow and its light and its gifts. So there are definitely shadows with Jupiter. Jupiter, though, is not trine this. It's not conjunct this. It's opposite this. Growth is feeling tempting. Expansion is feeling really loud. It's pulling us in. But if we are growing and inflating without integrity, that's going to feel extra loud. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. So if something is misaligned right now around how you take responsibility, what you take responsibility for, how you relate to success, how you relate to the meaning that you give your achievements, it's going to get loud. And it's in Cancer, right? It's going to bring up emotions. This whole time right now is really about getting more sitting with the discomfort, getting more authentic around what it is that you desire and what that will require of you. Why are you setting the goals that you're setting? Why are you trying to achieve these things, It's like this pressure on your identity, and this could be showing up around money, work, even visibility, right? Because this is the 10th house, and Capricorn rules the 10th house, which is the most visible part of our charts. I want to talk a little bit about the gift of greed and the shadow of greed and the gift of aspiration, where these two Cazimis are happening, because it has a lot to do with money, in fact. Right? So Glenda Hilstinger, for the Shadow of Greed, Gene Key 54, she says it drives us to endlessly seek to accumulate more and often without any real purpose. So this continues until we see the pattern that is driving us. And I think this is only going to be bigger because of Jupiter's influence opposing, looking directly at, why are you trying to grow and grow and grow? I've said this before and I'll say it again. Growth for growth's sake is the ideology of a Cancer cell. And what is it that we're not looking at? And on my Substack, I talk about that too. And to me, this opposition with Cancer and Capricorn, this is like mom and dad, right? Cancer being mom and Capricorn being dad, is really about it maturing into emotional adulthood. Just because we are adults sometimes does not mean that we've actually matured into adulthood, right? I think everyone who is an adult can relate. Like when you're younger, you look at people who are like 30 and you're like, oh my God, like I can't wait to be 30 and have it all figured out. And then you get to 30 and you're like, people are looking at me to tell them what to do. Like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, And I'm sure that just continues as you age, So this is really asking us to step into that emotional adulthood, stop using ambition and responsibility and productivity as a way to avoid feeling discomfort. But when you move into the gift of aspiration, this is moving into higher vision and higher purpose, and how it takes a lot of commitment and perseverance. And she says, if you have the 54th gift, you are here to bring hope, radiance, and possibility to those who may feel entrenched or trapped in their lives. That's your service. I don't know if you've been following my work, but this is really kind of what I do. And this is my North Node, right? And I have other placements there too. But this is really my North Node, is helping people get unstuck. And as we're talking about this, I kind of want to go into, I'm skipping around a little bit as I do, because that's how my brain works. I want to talk a little bit about how I think this is affecting men and women differently. Obviously, this is very nuanced, and it doesn't mean that all women and all men will feel this way. There's going to always be overlap, but and it's not about men versus women. It's just that women more easily can feel into the pleasure principle, meaning that they are societally, it's more supported for them to desire, to want, but it's not as supported for them to go after what they want, to have that Martian agency, that independence, right? Even when you think about money, women have only had control over their own money for decades in all of human history, you know, like that's not a lot of time that they've had access with their money. And so even there's a lot of unconscious societal feelings about women talking about money, women having money, women being self-directed when it comes to money. And then on the other hand, men more easily are supported in taking action and providing, right? But they're not really supported in examining their desires, slowing down to see like what it is exactly they want. And this is something I've been noticing too, because, and I think this Cazimi is going to be huge for this, but you know, in my life and in my work that I do, I talk about my offers often because I make services that I know can help people. And I'm really passionate about helping people. So if I have a service that I believe will help people, it would be almost cruel to withhold that. And what I've noticed in this world, especially in the spiritual scene, is that for some people unconsciously, there is, when women do it, it's like, ugh, she just like can't stop talking about her offers, because there is some part of us, some part of the collective unconscious that says like, you're, as a woman, you're allowed to desire and you're allowed to be of service, but you have to diminish yourself in order to do that. You have to kind of become a martyr. And whenever people feel that way, especially about me, I see teaching and learning as a active process, right? I'm not just educating people through words. I'm asking them to learn, and learning requires tension and discomfort, right? Because there's an edge between what you've known before and where you're learning, where you're growing into, and that can be painful. And sometimes I teach through my words, and sometimes I teach through my actions. And showing up and talking about my offers like in a revolution immersion because I believe in them might make people uncomfortable. And that discomfort is an invitation for growth. Now, they may not see it that way. They may continue to project their discomfort onto me. And I simply return to sender with those projections because I care, and I want to give people opportunity to grow, but we all have to make our own choices and decisions, right? This is what emotional adulthood looks like. I'm not here to make you comfortable all the time. Reassuring you or coddling you may keep you happy for the moment, but emotions are fleeting. And so then, you know, you may feel good, but then the next moment you feel stuck again. So there's this balance, right, between like structure and detachment and empathy and support, emotional support, right? Like, how do we seek that balance, just like every opposition asks of us? So during this, many women may be reuniting their desire with their agency, right? And men could be asked to reunite their actions with a sense of meaning. And of course, that can definitely, like I said, interchange between the genders. But whatever imbalance you're carrying in these desires and the will and agency, Jupiter says, I'm going to make it bigger until you address it. So what's coming up for you around these themes right now? What keeps being pointed out to you about responsibility and choice, aspirations, right? Money, success. How are you being asked to relate to those differently? What emotions have been coming up around these themes? Maybe you're giving to others and you are completely unfulfilled, right? Maybe you have a lot of faith and optimism, but your lived reality is not matching up to that. How do we close that gap? Hint, hint, it's somatically, by learning to sit with discomfort. Is there anything else I want to say about this? Yes, I wrote here, Capricorn strips us of fantasy. What can you actually build and sustain that means something to you? That's really ultimately what a lot of what is coming up through here. And once again, remembering that because Saturn is the ruler of these two planets, Venus and Mars right now in Capricorn, there is a dissolution. And dissolution requires that we feel the grief. Are you willing to take responsibility for making the decisions to bring that desire, that fantasy into your reality? This takes work. Building a dream that means something to you takes so much work. And I when I talk about this, first and foremost, I see myself as an artist. And being an artist means that I'm very creative and I innovate a lot. My brain is kind of impulsive in a lot of ways, but that's like, I get like these hits and I want to create from them, right? Like this understanding, things clicking together. And what ends up happening in that process is that I don't just show up the same every single time. And when I left my career as a pharmacist and just jumped into doing this, I had no idea what it was going to look like. And even once things start taking form, being an artist, putting yourself out there requires constantly having to be put into uncertainty. So I'm not just leading people through this, I am leading people through my lived experience and how I've navigated this shift, because I have to live every single time. And this is not coming from victimhood. I want to make it clear that people have this like fantasy around what it looks like when you start building your dreams. Like, oh, if only I was, I could just do this thing. It's freaking hard though. And you'll hear me say like, let it be easy, let it be easy. Yes. And that's a whole different conversation. You have to work hard. You have to take radical responsibility. You have to be, if you want to take radical responsibility of your own life, there's no one giving you a paycheck anymore. There's no one giving you a high five. There's a lot of quiet moments as you're building it. And this may not be for you, like leaving a career and doing what I did, but regardless of what your goals are, maybe it's around money, maybe it's around health, maybe it's around, maybe it is around career. I know that a lot of people that enter my world more deeply are suppressed creatives. So maybe it is that you're wanting to start something, or maybe you want to be a spiritual entrepreneur and maybe you haven't done it yet. And maybe there's a fantasy around what would happen to your life if you did have it. And let me just break that fantasy for you, because I love what I do. And it takes commitment, it takes discipline, unlike anything else that I've had before, and having to sit with uncertainty again and again and again and again. No matter how much I believe in something that I put out, if I think this is amazing, sometimes I put out something and I'm like, wow, that was the best thing ever. And it's like, no one watches it or no one likes it, and I'm like, oh, okay. And other times I'm like, oh, I'm going to put this out there, but like, I'm really nervous, or I said something that I didn't want to say and I'm going to put it out there. And then it's like that one blows up and it's like, whoa, there's no way to ever control the outcome, only to fall deeper and deeper in love with the process and learning to sit with the uncertainty of what that looks like. And that brings up so much wounding, right? So this is why I talk about my immersions, my workshops, my one-on-ones, because I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like around health, around money, around career, around relationships. I know what it feels like to be standing on this like edge, wanting to grow, but feeling terrified to take the next step. So that's why when we have this kind of pressure with these oppositions, we really have to get clear on how to work on that somatically so that we don't get overwhelmed and move from a dysregulated place, which is so easy to do, right? We get activated, we make a decision. So much of what we are being taught right now is that it's not about what decision you make, but how you make that decision. Do you self-abandon when you make that decision? I never give up a good opportunity to talk about Saturn. And I feel like when people come into my world, if you don't like Saturn, you know, you don't have to love him, but I know this from lived experience of having Saturn in my 7th house. The more I invite him into my life, the less he has to impose. The more I invite choosing integrity over growth at all costs, the more I invite containment, the more I invite some structure, uh, the more that my body can relax into being, right? That Cancerian just like relax into feeling because there's some structure there. I'm not gonna blend into nothingness, you know? You've done a lot just by choosing to be here and to listen to this. I know the people who watch me are people who are truly ready to grow. And that sometimes we stay in that desire to grow and not know how for some time, and that's okay. Um, but I thank you for trusting me as a voice that you bring into your life as you're navigating that change or desiring change and are unsure of how to do it. I have a lot of thoughts around this Cazimi, and maybe I'll put them in my email list or on Substack because there's a lot of information or a lot of messages that I'm receiving around what we're going through collectively. If you're interested in my Inner Revolution immersion, that is open. It's being capped at 20 spots. I'll have the link in the description down below. All my other offerings are also in my description, and see if any of it calls out to you. I'll see you next time.